Horror has long been a genre in film that uses gender to reinforce or deconstruct stereotypes. Early in the genre's life, we saw women as strictly side characters, victims or damsels in distress for our male hero to save. We see this in early horror classics such as Nosferatu and Frankenstein. All was changed, however, with the release of John Carpenter's 1978 film Halloween, which popularized the now common horror cliché known as the final girl. Then just 1 year later, we got Ridley Scott's film Alien, where we see not only horror tropes, but film tropes in general being subverted in a gender sense. This makes horror a prime candidate to analyze using the feminist approach. To deconstruct a piece of media while keeping this approach in mind doesn't mean to look at how only women are portrayed. Rather, we'll look at how gender roles in their entirety are shown to us. Film in general is a medium known to fall into social stereotypes, often to the detriment of a certain group.
Everybody immediately assumes you're mobbed up. It's a stereotype, and it's offensive.
It goes both ways, however. While fiction takes from the real world, it also has the power to influence it, which is exactly why it's important for us to analyze things with a lens such as feminism. How people are portrayed is important, especially in such a widespread medium like film. While early horror may not have women in leading roles, these films were still trying to say something about gender. For comparison, let's look at two previously mentioned monster flicks from these two defining time periods. Frankenstein and Alien both contain monsters that represent the consequences of toxic masculinity, with women being the main victim. However, in Frankenstein, women are oppressed and are exclusively victims, while in Alien, women resist the oppression put on them by narcissistic men. On the surface, Frankenstein appears to be simply falling into the stereotypes built by society at the time of its release in 1931. Women in this film are portrayed as helpless and in need of constant support from the men in their lives. For starters, Elizabeth. Her core character trait is she is Dr. Frankenstein's fiancée, and is a crystal clear example of an oppressed woman. Her role in the story is to be the love interest of our leading man, a thing he must protect. She is never in a scene alone, always accompanied by a man. When she is forced into isolation by her controlling husband, she immediately becomes a victim to the monster, a scene symbolic of a Mae Clarke's performance is a huge contributing factor in the character's stereotypical portrayal. She flaunts over Dr. Frankenstein in every scene they're in, coming off as a lonely woman who just wants her man to be okay. This dated relationship dynamic is sexist and a poor portrayal of a woman. The other female character in the film is the little girl that is killed by the monster. This is a case where gender was likely chosen to make sure the audience feels as bad as possible. The filmmakers wanted this death to be impactful, so they conjured up what they believed to be the most innocent of victims, a sweet little girl picking flowers. There's only two female characters with prominent screen time, and both end up as victims to the monster's crimes. Both are also written as flat side characters, while the men have more fleshed out personalities with character development. The monster does, however, show us what the film is trying to say about gender. While it sidelines female characters, it's not a coincidence that they are both victims. The monster was the result of Dr. Frankenstein's God complex. Therefore, the monster is the consequences of his narcissism, directly related to toxic masculinity. He is a man consumed by his own dreams of being on the same level as God. But once he realized he made a mistake, he fails to own up to it. He feels the need to protect Elizabeth, but never tells her from what, because as a man with a fragile ego, he doesn't want to reveal his mistakes, especially not with a woman. He will, however, discuss it with his male peers. The film gives us a shallow representation of women, while simultaneously giving us an accurate representation of toxic masculinity. Now, in the film Alien, we are greeted with both, to some extent. For starters, our protagonist is a woman with clearly higher intelligence compared to her male crewmates. The crewmates in question being another representation of toxic masculinity. They don't respect Ripley the same way they respect each other, and will refuse to listen to her even though she is often in the right. There is, however, one other female crew member who gives us the stereotypical approach to someone in crisis. Lambert is her name, and she spends most of the film crying, screaming, and overall not keeping a level head. This portrayal of a woman in crisis could be seen as sexist, but in a film such as this, with a character as anti-stereotypical as Ripley, Lambert could be here to simply represent what most people would do in a situation like this. Back to the male crew, our captain comes off as a total narcissist who does not listen to anyone but himself, and a few working class guys who are only there for the money. Their greed is spelled out clear as day when they ask Ripley if they'll get paid more after going to the distress signal, showing that money is more important than whatever life is calling for help. In this ship full of terrible men and toxic monsters, Ripley refuses to succumb to oppression and fights her way out. If Elizabeth was a clear example of how men think women should act in the real world, then Ripley is a clear example of the real struggle women go through due to the men around them. These two films seem very different, but in terms of gender roles, they are saying very similar things and have similar moments to compare. First, let's see how the introduction of the film's respected beasts is stemmed in toxic masculinity. In Frankenstein, the doctor is framed in a way that separates him from all the others. This is the film telling us how the character feels. He is separate from them. The composition, matched with Colin Clive's performance, equals the portrayal of a man gone mad with ambition. His ego has corrupted his work. This is confirmed when the monster is brought to life and the doctor says,
"In the name of God, now I know what it feels like to be God."
Dr. Frankenstein no longer wanted to create life for the power of science and to help mankind. He wanted to create life to be a superior man. He claimed the power that was once thought to be only possible by women, bringing life into the world. An unnecessary trait, but one he can claim as solely his own. Alien gives us a different birthing method for the beast of the film while still playing around with gender roles. When the crewmates are scouring the alien planet, one of them becomes infected with an unknown life form. They return to the ship but are stopped from entering by Ripley. She claims it's unsafe and protocol to not bring the infected crew member on board. Common sense, in other words. But this point is shot down by the captain, leading to the alien being unleashed upon the ship. In a different movie, it wouldn't be so far-fetched to have the genders be swapped, with the women being more compassionate for human life while the man is trying to follow orders. This role reversal accomplishes two things. We feel bad for Ripley when the crew ultimately goes against her judgment and lets the infected in, plus we view everyone as incompetent compared to her. After a while, the alien releases itself through the crew member from his chest, an obvious comparison to a human birth. According to IMDb, the director Ridley Scott has said that the whole process of the alien being born was meant to simulate and deliberately chose to have the victim be a man for the sake of subverting gender roles. Both monsters originate from the actions of men with large egos in each film. In Frankenstein, it's the doctor and his lust for godlike powers, and in Alien, it's the captain ignoring Ripley's warnings against bringing the infected on board. The beasts are the consequences of toxic masculinity in each world, where women are the key victims. These two movies are saying the same thing about our world. Toxic masculinity thrives, and women have to struggle because of it. On screen, both monsters are shown to the audience differently, but have a similar effect. While nowadays Frankenstein wouldn't be considered scary, it was considered such when it released. But with the horror genre changing rapidly over the decades, it comes off as child's play compared to Alien. The key difference is the fact that we see the monster in Frankenstein a lot, in clear lighting, while Alien gives us glimpses in the dark of its monster until being shown fully in the film's climax. Less is more has become the common thought process for horror monsters because the unknown is scary to us, and Alien takes full advantage of that. However, when the alien is shown to us, it enters the same realm as the monster and Frankenstein, that being they are both clearly just a man in a costume. While it can be assumed the filmmakers might not have wanted that to be super obvious, it actually works in their favor. Both monsters represent the evil men in our society. Both originate from man. Having them resemble men elevates the point that evil men are the cause of oppression on women. It may make them less scary visually, but makes the parallel to our world clearer. A very real horror that women must face in our world is a real-world example of their oppression in our society. Both films have scenes that could be interpreted as In Frankenstein, the monster attacks Elizabeth when she is locked in her bedroom and is found sprawled out on the bed, passed out. We never see the actual attack, but the fact she's laying on the bed means this scene could be representative of a... In Alien, it's the robot crew member who attempts to suffocate Ripley with a porn magazine. It's interesting that in both cases, neither act is done by an actual human male, which could be the filmmakers saying that anyone who does this heinous act is not human. Along with that symbolism is the interpretation that is inevitable for a woman whether they fight oppression or not. This, of course, being a sad truth in both films and modern society, as 1 in every 6 women in America are victims of... Here we have 2 fictional women, both oppressed, like in our world, except one is actively fighting against it while one falls into it. Regardless, though, both become victims of possible... In Ripley's case, the use of a porn magazine as a weapon is symbolic of the porn industry being a never-ending source of women being mistreated in our society. Ripley was also attacked due to her fighting against the oppression, meaning that women who fight back are likely to be oppressed even more by men in the real world. Alien and Frankenstein are 2 classic horror films that were able to show us the oppression women face in everyday life with 2 drastically different portrayals. They gave us 2 iconic movie monsters that are symbolic of the consequences that come with toxic masculinity. Frightening if you consider these films came out 40 years apart, yet make the same parallels to our current society. Women still suffer every day to the hands of monstrous men, and media remains a problem. We need more characters like Ripley in movies and TV shows we watch because they tell us that women can stand up against oppression. While both films show us the horror of men, Alien's subversion of gender stereotypes sets it above the dated portrayal of Frankenstein's Elizabeth, creating a beacon for all those who are oppressed to strive towards. Thank you so much for watching. This video is a little bit darker and more real than some of my other video essays. This was actually an assignment I wrote for a literature class I was in. My teacher really liked it, and it's talking about movies, so I thought I'd turn it into a video essay. It's probably a little bit more serious than stuff that I'll make in the future, but regardless, I hope you enjoyed that video, and if you did, please like and subscribe. And yeah, have a good day.